Speaking in terms of looking at an end of this, let's say this torus, our reality here, we'll call it reality 1. You have a second reality at 90 degrees, a third and a fourth, and you can even have a fifth. The second order reality is at 90 degrees. But you don't want to take the average that far in terms of the time element. You're rotating it around the torus, and what you do, you start pulling it around by speeding up the corkscrew. Then you, at that point, by going back to the normal rate. So that at 60 degrees, approximately, the average is optically invisible and radar invisible. If you stop a little before that, which is what they did in the final test, let's say perhaps 45 degrees, it's radar invisible, but not optically invisible. Almost, but not quite. So you rotate it and you hold it in terms of what is within the field. What's outside, theoretically, you don't worry about. Well, that was the theory, and of course the aspect of this is very interesting, namely the Eldridge and the generators were creating a sixth order field so that they could manipulate the fifth order field, which was T2, or the second order time. And we have five dimensions, if you will, 5 orders, however you want to express it, in our reality. And again, going back to what Bob said the other night, which is very neat, you have a 6th dimensional order, which is an isolation between the next 5, which is the reverse universe, actually the contraturnum matter. And if you go beyond the 11th, as Van Neumann knew, you then are in hyperspace and the 12th order. To get this project to work in terms of shoving the Eldridge into hyperspace and creating the bubble and creating the entire rift in time required a 12th order function. Now, the Eldridge was capable of a 6th order function, which would not do it. And I remember some of the discussions of Van Neumann after it was all over, and as he would say, this was in later years, well, the Eldridge had a 6th order capability. The project here at Phoenix had an 8th order capability. Where did the other 4 orders come from? They came from a very interesting function. The Phoenix project normally could only produce an 8th order function, but it had the capability in terms of its memory systems and the actual network, the lattice of the LC networks, which are the energy storage networks, and the way they were designed, they could store etheric orders of energy. Because it was a 25th order network, could store up to 25 orders of energy, up to the 25th. By turning the system on and the station on the 1st of August and leaving it on continuously, approximately every 24 hours, because they went through the entire torus of time through plus and minus infinity, they added 1 order of reality. After 5 days, they were the 12th order. And by the 12th of August, they were well beyond, because they left the station on continuously, and of course hoping there were no breakdowns, which there were not at that point, thanks to Preston Nicholsem and his engineering. It kept running. Now, the other aspect which was unknown to us was, of course, the biorhythm problem. That let us go over to another page. The Earth's biorhythms are only draw in terms of how they peak out. They produce literally a spike. 12 August, 12 August, 12 August, in 20-year intervals of concern to us, and also 2003. Here sat the Eldridge until it moved. And here sat the Phoenix project. It did not move. It was rather well anchored. And in the middle in 63, there's essentially nothing. There's another peculiar thing that happens. As you start this business of going through time, Let's mark this as 43, let's mark this as 63, and let's mark this as 83. You are looking at it on sidewise again. You're actually a full circle for the 40 years. It takes 40 years to go the full circle of 20 years where you have a synchronization point, you're 180 out of phase, which can be represented as a sine wave, like so, with a crossover point in 63. But this is a flat representation. This doesn't mean it's reversing polarity per se, but it does. The problem was created, and the problem was created as this. Time also has waves. Like a standing wave in electromagnetic theory on an RF transmission line, if you don't damp it properly and its characteristic impedance, let us show theoretically a nice little line where we have RF on it, properly terminated, it's even, of constant voltage, and as we say, the standing wave ratio is 1. That means you got perfect transmission and there are no waves coming back at you. If this thing is not properly terminated out here in the characteristic impedance of the source and the transmission line, whatever you're using, you start to get funny little things. These things start to build up, and you start to come down here to a lower level, and these start to build up, and you start coming to a lower level. You build up standing waves, and these things go up and they come back. And when it gets bad enough, you have enormous voltage levels. And theoretically, they can go unterminated out at this end. Theoretically, can go to infinity. They don't, for practical reasons. But you get the same problem in time.
10 minutes.
Got it. And this means something very extraordinary. If you have standing waves in time, you will find that this time factor starts doing this. The standing waves produce a phenomena of standing waves which go back and forth, and if you start whipping through the 63 point, the crossover point, and create a reverse time wave, you then have, in the reality in which you're dealing, the artificial reality as well as coupled to both ends, and most particularly in the 83 end where the Phoenix project is, you can generate, and they were in the process of generating, a reverse time wave. What happens if you have a forward and reverse time wave hitting the physical Earth at the same time? As I found out very recently, Dr. Van Neumann knew what the problem was and knew what could result. And they had to set up a special team prior to the critical date of 12 August 83 to handle the problem. Had they not found the correct team of scientists, there were 4 involved: Dr. Van Neumann, a second man whom I know but I will not give the name of because he doesn't want to give him, and 2 scientists from the future. Yes, I did say the future, because with Montauk they could go into the future or the past. They got a team together. They moved hardware to 1963 to provide damping, because they knew that if this thing was not damped sufficiently, at least to a critical level, to prevent the reverse time wave from hitting, do you have any idea what would have happened? They would have torn the entire tectonic plate structure of the North American continent apart, ripped off the entire top level of the North American continent, probably to the Rocky Mountains, to a depth of 500 to 700 feet. The ocean would have roared in, and we would have been back in the Stone Age instantly. That is what they faced, and that is what they had to prevent. And since I'm here talking to you today, they prevented it. Or they wouldn't be here, any of us. That was the problem they faced, and that is what they did correct. There was a code name for that project. The code name was Atlanticus Not Revisited. Rather interesting parallel. I'm sure some of you know the stories of Atlantis.